Okay, we're talking about quiz number 7, mixing with reverb, and so this should be pretty quick. In the book, he talks about using reverbs for different reasons. Things like blend, size, tone, sustain, and spread. Spread is very similar to what I use that stereo widener thing for. But you could do it with a stereo reverb as well. Okay, good. But to try to get in and dig into some of the nitty-gritty of, hey, I don't have a plugin that says a tone reverb, right? How do I make that? How do I use it? What do we do? So I tried to break that down into these individual parts. So you can use the same reverb if you like that air reverb that comes with Pro Tools. That works just fine. Any other reverb should have controls that will make these same things work. So yeah, the first one is a blend reverb, and this is what I talk about all the time of trying to make it sound like everybody's in the same room, or make it sound like we're all in the same song together, something similar like that. His suggestion, and I suppose mine too, is to take a regular reverb, remove the decay tail. So the decay time, move it much shorter if you don't have a separation between the decay and the early reflections. All those early reflections that we talked about before, that's what we really want to get. We just want to get the first bounce off of all the walls in the room. Yeah, so remove the decay tail and then use a 10 to 20 millisecond delay, pre-delay. Sorry, so 10 to 20 second pre-delay, then those early reflections, not so much the tail, and that's going to give you the first sort of glue that pulls everything into blending into the same space. Good. The next one we're going to talk about is size, right? So that's another thing that I talk about, especially when introducing pre-delay, is that the sound bouncing off of those walls, the longer it takes to get to those walls, the longer it is before it gets back to your ears, the longer the pre-delay. So, no surprise, we want a long pre-delay. Make sure you have at least 50 milliseconds of pre-delay. You'd have more if you wanted, but yeah, it gets ridiculous after a little while and starts to sound like a regular delay, especially if it's loud enough. And then EQ. So the EQ, to me, in my brain, that's kind of like whatever is on those walls that when it bounces back at you, if it's hard, shiny, reflective surfaces, you're going to have more high frequencies. So accent that with the EQ. If you want it to sound more studio-y, then maybe use EQ to make it a little darker, but have it be a big like sound stage or something. Good. Tone. If you're just going to use the reverb for a tone, again, we don't care so much about the reverb tail. We're going to be looking more at those early reflections, the things that happen toward the beginning of the reverb. So take the reverb tail away as much as possible, or just make it really short. And then in those, using an EQ with those early reflections, that's where you get more of the sound that you want. A lot of times I will use this with a dull sounding snare in a song that needs a brighter snare. So if I'm not ready to give up and replace it with a sample, then I will put one of these tone reverbs. Yeah, get a unnatural reverb is what this says, and remove the tail, and then yeah, use some brighter accenting the high frequencies. Okay, the last one we're going to talk about is a sustain reverb. It's very close to the size reverb, but it's going to have a shorter pre-delay time. Okay, Pre-delay on here, we're looking around a 25 millisecond area. So, right, the transient gets through, and then the reverb starts kind of right after the transient, and is going to sustain. We want to make that sound continue longer than when it dies out. You might want to consider, if this is your goal, using a compressor as well, right? You can put a compressor on a reverb track, right? You're allowed to do that. But if that freaks you out, don't do it. But you can, right? That's you can send reverbs to delays. You can send delays to reverbs. You can put compressors on you can use filters. You can do anything that you can do to like a vocal track, you can do to your aux track that has your reverb on it. So this is another reason that I like recommending to you guys, please, please, please send your reverbs on an aux track. Don't put them directly on your main track, even if you understand how wet-dry mixes work. Anyway, that's good enough for quiz 7. Thank you, and I'll be back soon with quiz 8.